Hello, I'm Dr. Basil Considine. I'm here from the ACU Online Writing Center, and today we're going to be talking about how to write about regulatory compliance. Now, this is a webinar that was requested by students such as yourselves to walk through the process of reading an assignment description and to plan out, to explain the different reasons with the goal of writing efficiently, doing exactly what is required for an assignment, and not spending unnecessary time writing text that ultimately can't make its way in there, either because it's not something that the assignment is asking for or because it exceeds the length. And so, with that, let's turn immediately to that assignment. So, we're going to take a look at this assignment that is drawn from the ITO program. This is coming from ITO 620, and this is the highlighting the need for information assurance. And we see that this description begins with a purpose, which is the kind of after this assignment, what you might look back and see, okay, this is what I was working on to practice workplace skills. Then we have the preparation, which is establishing the basic setting that you are assuming for yourself or your company as you are writing this paper. Basically, this is the role that you are undertaking. And then we have the assignment description for the paper itself, where it's a 5-page paper, and we have some specific things that are outlined here. So let's talk about some of these specific elements here. So one of the things we have to do in any assignment like this is to make sure that we are introducing the group or setting. In this case, it's a small dental practice. Now, it's not 100% necessary to give the geographic situation, but it would be very helpful to state something about the setting, which could include the geography. If, say, you were setting this in New York City, then that might be very different if this was a rural setting in, let's say, upstate New York or in the Texas Panhandle. Do the patients have many alternatives? Do they commute for long distances? What are the opportunity costs for changing practices? Now, I'm not saying you have to go into great detail on all of these things, but it will help you ground the specific suggestions that you are making. Now, one of those things that comes up here that suggests this might be important here is the electronic health record system interfacing with other systems. Now, if we were, say, using a setting like the state of Hawaii, where there's substantial integration between these different systems, then that is a different setting than if you are in one where there is a lot of, let's say, heterogeneity, a lot of variety in what's going on. And so, how you set up this will determine some of the things that you are going into, in addition to the basic requirements of the assignment about, say, legal and regulatory compliance, which there'll be some overall ones and also some that are driven by the locale. Now, if we're wondering about dental practice, that is generally regulated at the state level, just as, say, doctors' medical licenses. Now, that said, we want to check the specific jurisdiction that you are describing, or at least tell us as the readers what considerations are there. For example, saying it is located in a jurisdiction where these things do or don't apply. Presumably, you're going to be sending this in the United States, but if you're not, again, make sure that you clarify that. All right, let us go ahead and look at some additional things here. So in this description, we have a set of threat categories that need to be discussed, referring to the textbook, of course. And you see that there's some additional requirements in terms of minimum length, use of references in addition to the textbook. And if we review the rubric here, we see that this is giving us about 30% of the points for explaining how the dental practice complies with those requirements. So that's going to involve stating the requirements and how they're being met. and where those requirements are coming from. A serious consequence for non-compliance. And so when we look back to this, we see, oh, what might happen? Now, this can be up to and including things like losing the license, being denied permission to practice, revocation of someone's individual license, and fines. So, what are the things at stake here? And some of this with information security, say if we were looking at electronic medical records, there are stated violations. If you say don't report a breach, then you are subject to financial penalties that you are not subject to if you do timely reporting. Now, we also have this two additional needs, and that's aligning somewhat with these threat categories here, but make sure that you are not just describing the threat categories, but in keeping with this, stating how that it is necessary to comply with that. And then we see that 20% is going down to, is this appropriately formatted in APA style? Does it look professional by following those requirements? And does it have all the pieces of information in the right places? Okay, well, let's go ahead and talk about how we might start bridging this into practice. And the first step that we're going to do is we're going to take the assignment instructions and we're going to copy paste this into a Word document. All right, so I've pulled up here a copy of our template. And if you grab this for the first time, you'll see that there are instructional comments, which after you've read them, you probably don't have any need for. So you can just go to the Review tab. That's Review, and then select Delete. Delete all comments in document. You can see those are all gone now. And this particular assignment does not require an abstracts page, so we'll remove that. And we'll also take out the placeholder references. We'll come back to this section in a moment. And we'll take out this placeholder text here. That's just there to show you how the formatting works. All right, so we've kept all this bolded so it's easy to tell what the instructions are and what the text that you might be adding is. But the first thing we're going to do, since this says that you must be citing the textbook and referring to it, well, let's go ahead and make sure we add that first. So where do we find that information? Well, we could go right to the course syllabus where we have the two textbooks here, of which we're referring currently to this one here. So you could start with this and just copy that information. And then we head back to the Word document and paste that in. Now, the first thing that you'll notice is that that isn't matching the same font as everything else. So go ahead, you see this little box. After you paste it, you can select Match Destination Formatting. That'll get some of it right. We'll also click in here, and then we'll go to Home, Styles pane, and select APA Reference. You can see now we have that hanging indent. There's a few other things we need to do. The first initial, that should be abbreviated. So the first name should be abbreviated to initial on both authors. Make sure you have a space in between there, and we want a comma before that ampersand, even though there are only two authors. Also, in APA style, we don't include the ISBN. It's helpful if you're trying to order that specific book, but that's helpful to have in the syllabus, not something you should put in your references list. And then we also want to have a period here so to separate the title information from the book publisher. No city and state. APA 7 does not include that information. So we have who wrote it, when was it published, what's it called, including the edition number, and where to find it by ordering from that publisher. All right. So let's say we were going to add another article here. Well, we want to find that reference. So let's say you're looking in Google Scholar and you want to get this information. We're just going to do a sample search here. And we'll search for information security. And don't worry about the specifics here. What I'm trying to show right here is the way to obtain the information for your references list. And so let's say that this particular piece was one that you were going to use, or perhaps this one here. Let's take this one for now. So if you see the Cite button, this will give you a entry you can copy and paste. And we'll see, oh, wait, this is a doctoral dissertation. Maybe that isn't the kind of source you want to be citing here. Perhaps you prefer to have a peer-reviewed journal article, which is considered the gold standard in most areas of research. And so we'll say, okay, maybe not that one. Find another one that seems to meet our purposes. All right, let's say it's this one here. So cite, and we see we've got this, and we're going to grab APA style and head back to our Word document. Now I can go ahead and paste this in. And again, we want to match formatting. And you'll see that there are a couple things we want to change right away. All caps, it's important to keep in mind that whenever you're using a cite tool or a pre-formatting thing, most of that is machine generated. And that doesn't always work correctly, and it's only as good as the data that's put in. So to get this to be APA compliant, we're going to go ahead and we're going to use this tool here to switch that to sentence case, which is to say capitalize it the same way you would a sentence, because that is how we would be formatting the title of an article here in our references list. And you can see just like that, with 2 clicks, we've got that formatted correctly. Now, there's one other piece of information not included here that we want, and that is the URL for the article because it was being accessed electronically. Not a problem. Let's go back here, and if we open this up here, we have the journal website that is coming up. Now, depending on what we have access to, there are different URLs we might use. The ideal one is to have a DOI, a digital object identifier, which will always take you to wherever that journal might be living now. Not all articles will be, but this one does. If it didn't, we could also link to that PDF or to this web page here. But since it does has a DOI, we're going to grab that, and we're going to go back to our Word document and add that here. And something you might notice is that there are more than one there is more than one DOI format out there. The version that's being used in APA 7 looks like this, with just https doi.org and then the rest of the information. That is the most concise version that you can just click on and it will take you to that. There were 3 different versions that were allowed during APA 6th edition because they were all released during APA 6th edition, and for APA 7th edition, they said, okay, let's rationalize this. We only really need one way to do it. Let's take the best, most practical one, and this is it. All right. So for our next example, let's go to the ACU Online Library Distance Education portal. And so this is what you would be using if you're trying to access something that was required an ACU subscription rather than something you could just freely download online. And so we're going to go ahead and we're going to limit this to peer reviewed, and we're going to look for information system, say electronic medical record, and we'll search for dentist. And if we take a look at the results that pop up, we'll see that we have more than we can sift through. We have almost 19,000. All right, that's a very respectable amount. That means we should also go ahead and do things like limit this to full text. So only things that we can see immediately. Very helpful when you have an assignment that's due in a week or less. Let's also apply a date restriction because, we want something that reflects current practice. So in this case, we're going to set that to 2020 to 2024, 5-year period. Great. And you'll see that there's still quite a lot here. So we could be even pickier here. And, there's some things like this chiropractic one, probably not what we're interested in here. Private healthcare organizations, that often includes dentistry, perhaps that one. But, looking around, we might find something that you want to be more specific and say, all right, let's go ahead and add United States. And let's even add Texas here. See what comes up. All right, 401 results. That's a bit more manageable. And you could add additional things to get it more particular to your interests. So in this case, let's go ahead and add dental records. Ah, a scoping review. That sounds like it might be helpful and relevant for this. So we can go ahead, and if you were absolutely sure you were doing it, you could go right to the Cite button, which, as you can see, pulls up the different information. Also, if we clicked on that title link, we'd see things like the abstract here. So we can read through and see, all right, they were looking at standardized systems and research on it. And you say, okay, this is one I really want to use. And so again, we have a Cite button, and it pops up that menu again, and we can see we have a number of options. APA 7th edition, great. And again, we can go back to our references list and just paste this in. Again, we'll want to select match destination formatting. In this case, we'll go back to that styles pane and apply APA reference. Get rid of these extra bullets. And because this is a link that requires that you have an ACU account, we'll just delete that part. And now we have a functional DOI. And there's just one minor revision we have to do to capitalize this A after the colon, because that's how the sentence case rules work in APA style. All right. So if we were going to be citing this, this would be Benoit et al. This would be Wardhana et al. This would be Whitman and Mattard. All right. So let's talk about how to outline from here. So we need to establish the setting here. And you can see that this is in our regular non-bolded text. And so let's just get started. And so again, what particular setting you choose for this assignment will define in some ways the places that you are using and the regulations that go along with that, and perhaps some of the literature. So rural Oklahoma, rural Texas, many of things might be the same, but remember, license comes from the state level. So if you're using sources about what's applicable in Texas, you might want to make sure that that is aligned with the place that you're discussing. All right. Now you can tell us more about this, but right now we want to uh, give ourselves a list of things that have to go in here. So we need to list some things like the number of patients, perhaps their age ranges. And why is that relevant? Well, technical competency. So, for example, if you're trying to get everyone to use things on their smartphones, that might work better with some age ranges than others. And because it's saying they're using the system, okay, how long has it been used? And if you have something that you're making notes, oh, this is a sub item of the other, just indent it like you see here. Now, to give you an example, in the Washington, D.C. metro area, many of the hospitals use a electronic health record system called Epic. But there are different versions of Epic even within some of the hospitals, and some of them don't talk to each other, and some of them have different features for talking to each other that are more expensive, and not all hospitals have paid for that. So tell us not just about the system, but what it can and can't do. Now, it might interface with those while requiring significant data entry. It might work seamlessly. You tell us about this practice. And there may be security reasons why it's not doing something as seamlessly. Additional material assumptions you have made. So we're kind of covering that. And let's go ahead and move this up here because this is related to that. Now, material assumptions, you'll probably have them listed in terms of priority or importance. And now we have here, what does compliance look like? And remember, you want to know what your regulatory authorities are. Now, another thing that you might factor in to your description of the practice that would in turn align with the other details you choose to discuss is not only where is this located, but what kind of access do the patients have? And I'm not saying you need to go into paragraphs and paragraphs, but it is important for tracking things like how much trouble patients will have and how much devotion they might have to learning a system no matter what. In this case, we see that the average patient to dentist ratio is a lot larger than you might expect, and that in some parts of the South, that is absolutely huge. And so that specific area can have a substantial role to play, especially since Texas, for example, has large regions with limited access. And we've got some great dental schools out there, but I think everyone agrees more graduates aren't coming as fast as people would like. So that may be a overriding consideration. And just to make sure that you see that I'm not making that up, we're looking at an article about dental deserts here, and you can see we have a national ratio overall. Regional can be quite a different thing, and this is something that the federal government is involved in. And again, about regulatory things, if you are, say, accepting Medicaid, then you have a whole set of additional regulations that must be adhered to in addition to the state level things, because there's the regular state license, there's the state administration of their local Medicaid program, and then the federal regulations for Medicaid. So again, situating where things are will have a profound impact on things. And if you were, say, using the National Health Service in UK as your setting, well, that's going to be a whole other system. Now, when it comes to filling out this, it might be helpful to cite the relevant authorities as a practice located in or as a Medicaid accepting practice. Tell us those things and don't just summarize it. Make sure that you have your sources there. And if you're not sure where that information is, but you know that you can look it up, you can just leave yourself a placeholder like citation here, and then go ahead and grab that information when you're plugging in the specific details. Now, with this question of the most serious consequence, well, that would be a good thing to refer to your textbook, but also, don't be afraid to go look up more information. So where might you go for some additional information? Well, here, for the sake of argument, looking at the state of Texas, we've gone to the Texas State Board of Dental Examiners website. You can see from the URL texas.gov, this is an official state website. And if we were to look at the dental practice and TSBDE rules, we'd find that there are quite a few that are applicable. And you can see the specific legislation here. And if we were to, say, jump over to this item here, penalties and enforcement, and we were to do a search for records, we'd see that there are criminal penalties for access to dental records. And, this is referring to how it was added, but a Class A misdemeanor is not something we want to start with. Now, we can also see here under the Texas Administrative Code, which is a general body of laws that govern the state of Texas, we can see that there's a specific responsibility for the records of the dentist and that they must be maintained and kept for a period of 5 years after the last treatment, and that there's specific things that must be made available upon request. Now, this is something that ideally an electronic medical record system will already have these things built in. But you need to keep in mind to say if your practice was closing, what you have to do with the data. And then when you have a records transfer, that you need to inform the State Board of Dental Examiners in writing and a few other things like that. So, the specifics that you will be writing about um, are things that you will find based on your reading of the book, the textbook, and your outside research. But let's say you were going to cite something like this. Well, we have the Texas Administrative Code, and it tells us the different portions here. So, what would that look like in your document, in your references section? So, as before, we're going to start by just pasting the information here. And right away, you see that does not look the way we want. So you can go ahead and select keep text only. And now it's a little bit easier for us to strip out the things we don't want. So the first thing to do is to specify the statute. Now, if we are working with the general code, then we're working with the general code rather than a particular uh, act that was added to it. So in this case, we are going to be working with Texas Administrative Code, and that's going to involve uh, Title 22, Part 5. Now, to simplify things, I've gone ahead and shown the citation here, minus one thing that we need to add, the URL. But let us, oh, yes, the URL and the date for the version that you are accessing. But you might be wondering, well, hold on, aren't you including the part or the subchapter? That's just something where the rules for Texas say leave that out. Now, we do want 108, which tells us the chapter, and then point 8, the section within that. The title, or which is a subdivision within the code, that goes here. This is the specific section I'm referring to. And it has this abbreviation, text.admin.code. All right. What about that other information that we need to add? All right, let's go ahead and add our date here, 2024, our URL, and then we can go ahead and remove this other information that we copied and pasted in to extract the relevant fields. Now, how would this be cited? Let's look at that in the body here. And then we'd have the title there, Records of the Dentist, and then 2024. Now, is that the only way you can cite it? No, you'll see some other things where the particular name of the section or the law or the uh, edition is not listed. So if you're citing a law in general, you might have this information here instead included. But because we have that more user-friendly title, we use that when it is available. Okay, let's take a look at this. We have two categories here. So we have a helpful list here of what should go in each. All right. We're at category 1. and then threat category 2. Now, I don't know what you're going to be choosing from this, but I can say that we do know that you're going to have to explain how it applies and some important details. Now, where your category is coming? Probably from Whitman. So you might have phrasing like, according to Whitman, and then the year, that's going to be Whitman and Mattered 2018. And so, okay, according to these people, this thing is a significant threat. And explain what that is. Tell us more about it, which could involve using your other sources. Give us some supporting evidence for that. All right, let's take a moment to step back and look at how this is going to be spreading out, because we have 5 pages here, and it's would not be out of scope for this to have 1 page, and you can give yourself notes like that. 1 page to introduce this, and to have roughly 1 to 2 pages for this, to have 1 page here, 1 page for here, and that leaves around 1 page for your conclusion, which you should absolutely remember to have and plan for. Let's say 0.5 to 1 page. So looking at this, we'd see that if you're going to have around a page of that, you're probably going to want to have 3 or so full paragraphs. Introduce the threat category, described in detail. Okay, that's going to be at least a solid paragraph. How it applies to a dental practice. All right, another paragraph. And then if you need more things to write to fill that, you might have something about the practice's ability to meet this. And do the same thing for the next one. And one of the beauties of this is that when you see, oh, yeah, I need to discuss that for one threat category, it's very easy to see, oh, I should do that for the other one as well. And so if we look at this, okay, about for the need for security, all right, uh, if that is around a page, say 2 to 3 paragraphs, and again, 2 to 3 paragraphs, actually, if it's 2 to 3, then we can see this part here, 1 paragraph, and this 1 to 2 paragraphs. Now, let's say 1 to 2 paragraphs for this one as well, because you might have a shorter section for one and a longer for the other. But ballpark, this is going to get you 1 to 2 pages. And now we have an idea. If a standard paragraph is going to be 5 to 7 sentences in length, then we have an idea of how much you have to write for everything, because we've been looking at the requirements, and we've looking at, okay, how much space will it take to do that? And you can always go back to the assignment and look and check against the rubric. And here we find, all right, how the dental practice complies with that. If that is going to be 3 points, this is going to be 3 points. This is 2 points. That aligns somewhat with these two being longer sections of, let's say, 1.5 to 2 pages each, which is pretty much what we were talking. And then this, you might be able to do it a little bit shorter, but again, 5 pages is the minimum, and this is in terms of proportion, the planning we've already done will get you somewhere around 5 pages. Okay, so let's talk about a few more things before we wrap up. First off, if you are wondering Well, what about all these APA rules that you're referencing? I'm not sure how those go. Well, you're in luck. I'm on the ACU Online Writing Center webpage, and if I go to resources and select APA 7, you'll find a lot of different helpful things here. But I would actually recommend going to services writing webinars because we have a selection of APA related webinars, including one specifically on APA 7th edition and teaching you the most common rules that you need to use that you can watch. And that'll be somewhere around an hour. And we have numerous follow up webinars that you can also go to. Scroll down past this calendar and go to Graduate General Writing. You'll find a number of different related things, including about some specific tasks in APA style, as well as other bits of writing and advice. And if you've been told you need to work on your paragraphs, we've got a webinar about just that. To wrap things up, please feel free to send us questions and requests for new webinar topics at onlinewritingcenter@acu.edu. Please feel free also to schedule an appointment by going to my.acu.edu and under Academic Resources, selecting Online Writing Center, or go to the Online Writing Center website for more information, including access to our collection of videos. Have a good night.